Welcome to this explainer. Look, if you use language models at all, you know that exact feeling of frustration, right? You hit enter, and the AI just completely misses the mark. It gives you a rushed, totally nonsensical output. Well, today we are looking at chain of thought prompting, and we're going to see how providing a structured path really isn't some kind of dark magic. It's actually a super practical way to dramatically improve your answers. It's all about moving from those kind of vague requests to deliberate step-by-step guidance.
So, here's what we're covering today. Think of this agenda as our own little scaffolding. We'll start with the destination versus the path, look at the mechanics of the pattern completion machine, build some text scaffolding, discuss why imitation isn't understanding, and finally, wrap up with exactly when you should be using this technique.
Okay, let's dive right into Section 1, Destination versus the Path, and how changing our approach actually changes what these models do.
To start off, we really need to clear up a massive misconception. A prompt is not just a direct request like a simple search engine query. How you ask literally changes what the model can actually do. On one hand, you have the destination approach. Asking directly like this forces the AI to make this messy, giant leap where it almost always misses vital details. But on the other hand, you've got the path. When you invite the model to work through an idea step by step, it becomes instantly more accurate and organized.
There's a fantastic analogy for this from our source material. Think of it like giving directions to a driver in a huge, chaotic city, like Karachi. If you only give them the final destination, sure, they might still get there eventually, but they could take a terribly messy route, miss a turn, or get totally stuck in traffic. But if you give them landmarks and a clear, structured path, that exact same trip becomes incredibly easy to follow. Those thinking steps you put in your prompt, those are your landmarks. They simply provide the AI with much better internal guidance for the journey.
Which brings us perfectly to Section 2, the pattern completion machine. Let's look at what the AI is actually doing under the hood. Now, to really grasp why this step-by-step thing works so well, we've got to bust a really persistent myth. The AI is not sitting inside your computer with some sort of human-like consciousness. At its most basic computational level, it is a pattern completion machine. It doesn't reason like you or I do, it just generates the most likely continuation of a text pattern based on everything it's seen before. It's basically an incredibly powerful autocomplete system.
And because it's just completing patterns, the AI doesn't have, a permanent memory notebook of your entire life. It uses the very words you give it in the prompt as its temporary workspace. Think of a cook preparing a big meal. A completely bare counter gives them absolutely no room to sort their ingredients, right? But a well-arranged counter makes cooking smooth and easy. The ingredients are exactly the same, but the layout totally changes the result. Your prompt is that counter space. Structure absolutely changes performance.
Here's another way to picture it. A vague prompt is kind of like giving a tailor short, super vague measurements. I mean, they can still cut the fabric and produce an item of clothing, but the fit is probably going to be totally off. On the flip side, a structured prompt provides exact, step-by-step measurements. The model can produce an output from almost nothing, sure, but giving it more structure practically guarantees a much better final fit for your specific needs.
All right, moving on to Section 3, building your text scaffolding. Let's talk about constructing that path.
To really understand why chain of thought is such a game changer, we need to look at how human reasoning actually functions, because, at the end of the day, that's exactly what the AI is trying to imitate. When we solve a problem, we humans move through a pretty predictable sequence. We identify the problem, we notice the facts, we combine the details, eliminate the bad options, and then finally, we settle on a conclusion. Chain of thought literally forces the AI to recreate this exact sequence in text step by step, instead of just taking a wild guess from a distance.
We call this text scaffolding. Just like in physical construction, the scaffolding isn't the building itself, right? It's the temporary structure that helps the actual building take shape. When an AI generates these intermediate reasoning steps, every single word it writes heavily influences the very next word it generates. It's exactly like laying bricks. If you lay a nice straight first row, the rest of the wall is super easy. A crooked first row? Well, the wall's going to drift. By forcing the AI to write out these steps, the reasoning becomes this amazing, self-reinforcing process.
Imagine trying to build a bridge over a massive gap. Throwing down one giant unsupported plank is incredibly risky. But if you build it with several connected sections, you distribute all that load. That's what chain of thought does. It breaks the computational entanglement. Instead of compressing the entire problem into one massive leap of faith, it distributes the cognitive load across multiple, highly stable sections of text.
But hold on just a second. This brings up a really important question, a sort of narrative speed bump for us here. If adding steps is good, does more steps always mean better reasoning? Like, does writing a massive, novel-length prompt somehow guarantee perfection?
Well, the short answer is no. And this brings us right to section 4. Imitation is not understanding. We really need to understand the limits of the model here.
More steps absolutely do not automatically mean better reasoning. In fact, sometimes throwing in extra steps just creates more chances for the AI to drift off topic or invent totally useless details. You see, because an AI can produce step-by-step explanations, it really feels like it's thinking. But there is a massive, fundamental difference between generating reasoning-shaped text, which is just simulating the form, and actually being a conscious reasoner with true inner understanding. The AI has learned the style of human reasoning, but not necessarily the strict discipline of it.
Think of a movie stage set. If you look at it from the exact right camera angle, it looks like a perfectly real, bustling city street. It's incredibly convincing. But if you actually walk behind the facade, it's literally just wood and painted canvas. Chain of Thought produces a really convincing reasoning scene that, yes, often leads to the right answer, but sometimes it only looks thoughtful. And that is exactly why we still absolutely need your human judgment. You can't just rely on blind trust.
So let's wrap this up with our final section. Number 5, when to use it. Let's get into the practical application.
Let's take all this theory we've been talking about and turn it into something you can actually use today. Chain of Thought absolutely shines in a few specific scenarios. You're going to want to use it when your task has hidden dependencies or multiple complex constraints. For example, say you ask an AI to plan a food stall order, but it's under a strict budget, with limited storage space and heat-sensitive ingredients. If you just jump in and ask, "What should we buy?" it's almost certainly going to fail. But if you force it to lay out the budget first, then the shelf life, then the projected demand, suddenly you'll get a sensible recommendation. It's also absolutely vital when there's a high risk of the model rushing, or when you explicitly need to catch and inspect its work for errors.
Because remember, the AI isn't pulling truth out of thin air. A direct guess is like trying to navigate a complex maze by choosing a tunnel completely blindfolded. Step-by-step reasoning is like checking each turn against a map to systematically narrow down your possibilities. Now, the map might not be 100% perfect every time, but is infinitely better than just guessing in the dark.
And that leaves us with one final absolutely crucial thought for you to take away from all this today. Are you going to keep just blindly trusting AI to magically jump to the right destination, or are you ready to deliberately diagnose and control its path? By understanding Chain of Thought, you transition from just crossing your fingers and hoping for the best to actively structuring the AI's workspace for real success. You change the path, you completely change the result. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this totally transforms how you structure your next prompt.